Norris. You're watching Bosun Dan Bushcraft. This is 10 knots and hitches useful in bushcraft and survival. So, a bit of a change of location for today. Usually I would be in the woodlands. At the moment though, typical British weather, British summertime, considering it's July, it simply will not stop raining, off and on showers, and as much as I personally aren't bothered about getting a little bit wet, the cameras and equipment will not tolerate it. My camera is unfortunately not waterproof and it really does not like the damp, gets all foggy on the lens. So instead I've come to work where I've got this lovely indoor archery shelter, or at least covered up, and I'm going to do it in here today so that nothing gets absolutely sodden. You can guarantee though, because I'm here doing it under a cover, it's probably not going to rain. So I've brought myself off to where I work. For any guys who are interested in that, we do lots of outdoor activities: archery, air rifle shooting, segways. I think we are possibly the last place in the UK that still does the zorbing, where we throw you an inflatable ball, roll you downhill. And it's called Madrenaline Activities. It's literally just adrenaline with an M at the front of it. I will put a picture up of our sign at some point in this video, so if anybody's interested, you want to book an activity, you're more than welcome to. And the chances are, if you do, I will probably be your instructor, depending on exactly what activity you choose. I do instruct most of the things up here. Available for anything really, people who just want to come and have a go, parties, birthday parties, hen do's, all of that. But that's why, if anybody's wondering why I'm surrounded by weird things and archery equipment, that's why. So, as I'm not particularly brilliant at editing and sticking in still shots and bits of this, that and the other, I figured I'd just walk you to the end of the driveway, show you one of our signs, and then should you decide you want to book any activities with us, go nuts. You can find us from there. We are on Facebook, YouTube, all the usual places. And some people have struggled with the name a bit, Madrenaline. It's literally just the word adrenaline, but with an M at the start of it. So if you're interested, birthday parties, stag, we do all sorts of stuff, you can check us out. The figure 8 knot, very simple knot, very easy to use, very good for climbing purposes, particularly for fastening yourself onto a harness or anything like that really. It's a very simple knot. It's very simple, very similar to the one that we all use pretty much on a daily basis, the overhand knot. So to tie an overhand knot, what you would do is make your loop and then just put your rope through or cord through from underneath, overhand knot. To tie the figure 8, it's very, very similar. Tie your loop, but now instead of going from underneath, I'm going to go around and over the top, and there we have figure 8. Okay, if you're using that to anchor to a point or anything like, I'm just going to make it a bit bigger. I haven't left myself much on the dead end there. Common problem with tying knots, you forget that you need knots can actually absorb quite a bit of rope. So if I was looping that onto something, tie it through the loop, say it was a climbing harness, anything like that, and then all you're going to do is backtrack, follow it back round. Yeah, trace that rope through everywhere that it is, like so, back around and through, and there we have a double figure 8 with a loop. Now, any good knot, the best part of a good knot really is that you can get it undone again. It's of no use to you if this is a good piece of rope you intend to use again. You put a knot in, you can't get out, pull it from the top loop and it'll go slack, and from there you can just unfeed it straight out, or you could just pull your loop section through, in which case it's undone completely. Now the figure 8 can be tied on the bite, which basically means you can tie it from the loop to start with so that you don't have to re-thread. That's great if you've got carabiners and stuff, or if what you're going to do is throw that loop around a pole or something like that, in which case it's exactly the same. Take it as that loop there, go around as if you're going to do that overhand knot. Instead of going from underneath, come all the way around and over the top. And there we go. your figure 8 in a loop, tied from a bag. So the question I've been asked is, why can't you just do an overhand loop? You can. I promise you that overhand loop will hold just as securely, even if you are dangling your entire body weight or a lot of weight. It will work, it won't slip, but the overhand knot tends to be a heck of a lot harder to then undo once it's been loaded, once it's had that weight on it. Which is great if you're not bothered about the piece of rope or cord that you're using. If you intend to use it again, not quite so much fun. Because the figure 8's got that extra loop, it spreads that weight about it. It doesn't lock up as quickly. So with the figure 8, it's always a lot easier to undo. And like I say, it won't slip. So those are the advantages. And I've used the figure 8 for so many different things. I've even used it to fasten anchor points to trees when you're winching vehicles and stuff like that. So it is just a good, really, really solid knot to use. And undoes really nicely. Well, that was actually the overhand knot, but to be fair, with rope like this as well, big heavy rope, knots tend to be a little bit easier to undo. Would an overhand loop, if you've dropped your full weight on it, undo easily? Don't know. Can't say that I've ever done it, because once you've used the figure 8, why would you bother? It's just more of a nuisance than it is anything useful. But the figure 8, dead simple once you get used to it. Go as if you're going to tie an overhand knot, but instead of going in from underneath, just go over, and there we go. So the bowline or bowline knot, depending on how you want to pronounce it, another good knot. You can use them as a climbing anchor and things like that. They don't tend to like being side loaded though. Vertical loads are fine, but it's another great one. You can anchor a lot of weight through them and all of that. Why would you use this instead of just the figure 8? The figure 8 is harder to adjust when you want to shorten it. If your loop there is a little bit too big, particularly say if instead of using it for an anchorage point of view like climbing or something, if you were using it to anchor a tarpaulin or something that you might want to add extra tension to, the bowline would serve better, because you can adjust it by simply pulling on that end to set your distance and then pull the dead end to tighten it, and there it is, adjusted. Some people struggle to tie these. They are actually very simple. Like a lot of them, it's a loop in a loop, really. I'll show you that right now. So first thing to do, make yourself a loop. I'm going to do this one as an overhand loop. If you want to do the underhand, that's fine, but you kind of tying it backwards. So if you do the overhand loop, so it's over the top of it, take your dead end there, and it goes through that loop, over the top of that top piece, around the back there, and then back through the loop like that, and just pulls together. I'll just do that one more time because I'm not sure whether that was on the camera shot. If you hear a large bang happening, there's an automatic crow scaring device in the background, keeps letting off a firework of some description every so often. So tie it over, well, don't tie, make an overhand loop. Take the dead end of the rope, put it through the loop you've just made, over the top of that and around the back, straight back where that first piece came from, pull them, and then from there you have a bowline. The reef knot, often referred to as the square knot. Bit of a thing with knots and hitches and stuff, so some of them have got many names. This one I've always known it as a reef knot, and it's very useful for joining two pieces of cord together or two pieces of rope together. So when I'm camping, I'll often have bashers, military tarpaulins, very excellent roofs. You can build massive structures out of them. We have done many times. And sometimes one of your lines isn't quite long enough. I like to have lots of paracord fastened at various places, and I make it so I can get them off easily. And that way, if one of my lines isn't long enough, I'll just take one off from somewhere else and I'll lash them together with a reef knot. And it's a great temporary fastening. So make a loop in one of them, take the rope through the loop, underneath, over the top, and back through the same way. So you end up with two opposing loops like that. But once pulled tight, won't move anywhere. Very handy. And the best part about it is it's temporary. To undo it, you can push it back through sometimes. But particularly with smaller cord like paracord, you need to unlock it. And the way you do that is take either end, doesn't matter which one, and you see how you've got the loop on that side, pull it against that loop. It'll then slip, and it'll actually slip into a clove hitch. You can then either unthread it, or you can just slip it off the end, and that side will turn to nothing again. Handy, like I say, for joining various different cords and things like that. Very useful little one to know. So, the constrictor knot. Now, excuse me, the constrictor knot is pretty much just a clove hitch with a little bit of an extra thing on it. This shirt here, Nakatomi Corporation Christmas Party. Bit of a nod to Die Hard there. Everybody loves that film. Let's start a debate. Is it a Christmas film? Comment below. So the constrictor knot. It is just a clove hitch with a little bit of an add-on, basically. And it's used for when you want to fasten things together permanently, so a loop, or if you want to, particularly useful to stop the ends of rope fraying. Any other thing you want to find that you can use it for, really, tying things together that you're not really wanting to come apart again. So what I'm going to do now, I'm just going to adjust the camera a little bit better so you can see what I'm doing, because it's a bit of a fiddly thing at the best of times, and I'm a bit useless with camera angles. I keep doing it so you can't actually see what I'm doing, and then I have to refilm it all, and I drive myself mad with it. So the constrictor knot, you've got your two pieces there that you want to join together. You take it round, so it goes under itself there, and that one's going to go around and back through that loop there. So make it tidy though, yeah, like that. Okay, so that at that point there, and it looks like that, is actually just a clove hitch. So what I'm going to do is slacken that loop on the left. It doesn't really matter whether you slacken the left or the right loop, to be fair, and then just wrap that back underneath itself like so. And then when you pull it all nice and tight, could have left myself a bit more rope to work with, pull it all super tight. There we go. And that is a constrictor knot, and it will not come undone. So clove hitches work when they're pulled one way or the other. The constrictor knot is designed to not open up when you pull that way and that way. This one is doing a little bit, but that's slippery paracord, to be fair. I think with a slipperier rope like this, how I slackened that loop and then wrapped it, do that with both. So slacken the right side loop as well, and take that once round itself also. If I can get the little thing in there, slippery little, get in there, you pain in the backside. So that's kind of a double constrictor. And like I say, the trouble is this paracord is really quite slippery stuff. So we're going to pull that original loop tight, and then pull that in, and then now give it a jolly good old haul. There we go. And that is that any better? Oh yeah, that's much tighter, much less likely to come undone. The thing with the constrictor knot, particularly when you're using like braided rope or twine or something like that, it is a very, very grippy thing, and it doesn't like to come undone. It is doing on this stuff, but this is paracord. It's very nylon-y, it's very slippery. And usually, to get them off, what you have to do is just cut through that top section there, and then they will come off. I'm not recommending the constrictor knot to tie a loop like that that you're going to be hanging any particular weight off, because as you can see, you know, this is a climbing rope, it's a static climbing rope. Paracord's very slippery stuff and it's slipping about, but it will not open up sideways. Basically, if you side load it, it won't open. And usually what you do, like I say, just run a knife through that top section there and it'll, well, it's gone in it, then you've sliced it, you've ruined it. So hello, that's me. Hopefully that's worked this time and not have me and my dodgy camera handles. And that is your constrictor knot. Now the prusik knot. Anyone observant might be noticing I'm now wearing a climbing harness and probably wondering why. That will all become clear in just a moment. So the prusik knot is, well, to be fair, it's long been contended. Is it a knot? Is it a hitch? Is it something else? I'm not really going to get into that debate. But what you need to do a prusik is an otherwise length of rope or string that needs to be then made into a loop. And the way that this is obviously just some thin paracord, but it'll serve our purpose for what we want to do today. And what I like to do is to make the loop, to make it in a way that I know it's not going to come undone, is to simply tie two opposing overhand knots, leave a little tail on it so you can still see if it's moved or not, and then tie it onto the paracord or rope or string itself. Same again, I'm going to do that on this side. Just stick another overhand in it, and then they are on the string like that. You'll find that system actually in a lot of like leather necklace. In fact, actually in this particular leather necklace that I'm wearing right now, that is in fact a sharpening stone, a whetstone from Wazoo Bushcraft Supplies, and they've used the exact same system to make the necklace adjustable. Just two opposing knots so you can pull it tight or pull it slack. That's exactly what I've done right there, just two opposing knots. And when I pull that together, and then just give the dead ends a little tighten, pull that together, it will lock, and then it won't move. You probably won't be able to adjust that now. I wouldn't recommend pulling it that tight if you're using it for a necklace. But the prusik, the purpose of it is to grip things, i.e. other rope and stuff like that. Now, I appreciate a few of the things we've done so far. They're kind of geared towards climbing, yes, but what's good for one outdoor thing tends to be good for many. Obviously, if you were in a survival situation and you were lucky enough to have some rope, you might find yourself having the need to either climb up something or to traverse down something. And if you can know a few skills that will help you make that a lot safer, even more better. Also, something that I've used prusiks for is if you need to get food off the ground, you want to hide it up in the trees so that animals and bugs and stuff don't get in it. This is a good way of doing it. Obviously, it's not like we're particularly worried about bears or anything in the UK, but there is always bugs and ants and other such things present. Hold on a minute, I forgot my carabiner. So the prusik, there's a couple of ways to use these on the rope. There's probably more than two. I'm just going to show you two. I apologise if it is a little bit dark. I was going to do the camera out there so we're looking in. It is just started raining, so I can't do that. So take your loop, and all you're going to do is literally wrap it around. Leave a little bit longer on the top than the bottom, because that's going to have to reach down to the loop at the bottom once you've done the wrapping. And literally just wrap it around your rope, like that. As many winds as you've got the rope for, really. More is better than less on this. If you've only got 2 or 3 winds, it's not going to work very well. Okay. And once you've got all those loops wrapped around your rope, you take your top loop, your bottom loop, and fasten whatever you want to fasten into it. In this case, I'm going to use this lovely wide carabiner, like that. Okay, obviously if you were tying up a bag of food, you'd fasten your bag of food to it, or whatever it is. What makes this special is it grips rope, and it really does grip rope very, very well. And you wouldn't think it. If I push that up higher like that, I hope I'm still in camera shot. Now I apply weight to that. The power cord really is quite strong. I cannot physically pull that down the rope. It will not move at all. Okay, but Unlike a lot of other methods of tying something to a thing like this, which will get stuck, once the tension is off it, take it from the bottom. If you want to move it up, push, it goes up. Anchor it again so it's solid, take it from the top, push it down, and it moves. But the moment weight is applied, locks firm, won't move. And you can, depending on the load, if it's a really heavy weight, you probably wouldn't, but if it's a lightweight, say a bag of food or something like that, you can literally just slide it down with the weight on. Any more weight, it's not going to do it. And these grip in a stupidly strong way. I'll show you how much. I'll get it anchoring, hence the climbing eyes. I'll get it to anchor my own body weight. This is where I'm putting a lot of faith in 3mm paracord, but last time I did something like this, it held me, so I'm going to assume, unless I put a vast quantity of weight on. Are we ready? Trusting the paracord. This could be a blooper. Trusting the paracord. Oh, there we go. And I have my own nice little swing. That's quite relaxing, actually. And the prusik is taking all of the weight. I am not holding the rope at all. It will not move. So obviously you can use these for climbing up a rope if you needed to, or if you were traversing down a rope, a safety backup in case you fall. Because every step down you take, all you do, if I can get my weight off it, is, I've got a bit too much weight on it, there we go. As you're stepping down something, push it down. If you were to slip on what you were walking down, simply let go, and the prusik would re-grip and stop you from falling. But like I said at the start, a great use for this is pushing things up into trees, food and stuff like that, so that critters can't get at it. Because you don't want your dinner full of ants, unless you like eating ants. It's not a favourite of mine. Another good thing about this as well is tarps and things like that, anchoring those sorts of things. So if you've got a centre line for a tarp or a basher or something like that, so imagine for a moment that's fastened horizontally and that giant carabiner was connected to a more sensible one fastened to your tarp, you could use the prusik across the centre line to tighten your tarp, and as soon as you get a bit of weight on it, locks won't move. And then if you need to adjust it at any point, take it to the top and it moves. So that's the first way to tie a prusik on. There's probably more than two, but we'll keep it simple, and there's two for today. So as you saw, what I did there was simply wrap it round the rope like that. Another method is to take it as a loop like that, hold it on the rope, and then just keep passing it through itself. Yeah, I prefer the first method I showed you just because it's easier to get it neater. This one tends to wiggle a bit more as you're doing it, and I have not found any advantage. They both seem to perform exactly the same. So balance it out so your loops are as they are. See what I mean? It looks a little scruffy, doesn't it? But the end result is exactly the same. Scruffy or not, slide that up there. The end result, it grips exactly the same. And like I say, when it's loaded like this with quite a weight, you won't pull it, you won't loosen it. Lighter weights, yes, but with your body weight, no. So if you were anchored to something in a bad sitch with this, you're not going to accidentally slide down the rope or knock yourself loose or anything like that. As soon as you get the weight off it again, give it a ruffle, just do that with it, it moves, it's free. The prusik is an incredibly useful method for doing all sorts of things. I've even used it to haul a rope up somewhere else. So if you've got a rope and you want to drag it to somewhere and you don't know how to anchor it, a prusik works. So do several other things, to be quite honest with you, but a prusik will work for lots of different stuff like that. And it is so simple to do with nothing but a loop. And like I say, it does have lots of different applications. It's one of them. Knots are always useful. You find something to do with it regardless. The Highwayman hitch. Beloved by many people. My kids love it just because you can yank on that end there and it vanishes completely. Very simple, very effective. Pull on that and it just completely whips off, which is what's so good about it. Very simple to do. Make a loop or a bite, take it over what you want to anchor it to. then a loop from the live end, that's the end that goes to whatever you're anchoring. Take that through that first loop that you did. Now take the dead end, the bit that's doing nothing, and loop through that last loop there. Important though, make sure that you've got a good sized loop there, because when you pull it tight, it'll anchor like that, it's going to pull that loop down and it needs to get to the point where it stops. If that last loop was a really small one, it would have just pulled it through and come completely undone. From there now, you can pull on that and it'll just get tighter and it'll lock. It isn't going to come off easily up until you pull on that, and the whole thing just vanishes. Very, very useful little hitch there. The Italian hitch. The Italian hitch is incredibly useful when you're lowering things. You can lower yourself off it. You can use it as an abseil thing. You can abseil yourself with it, or you can use it to lower equipment, heavy stuff, very safely. Most people end up tying an Italian hitch accidentally when they're trying to learn the clove hitch. You can kind of see why when you look at it like that. And it is really quite simple. Once pulled tight, it loops over itself and securely holds it until you loosen that end. Okay, so to tie the thing in the first place, most people, like I say, will accidentally make one when they're making a clove hitch, but you can see the pattern there. It's literally just a false loop in a loop. So if you take it, make your loop, and then go round the back like that, you can see why it's like a failed clove hitch. Your carabiner or whatever you want goes in between those two like that, then it will come together like that, and it will run one way and lock, or it will run the other way and lock. It would lock, there's no weight on the other end, and lock. So it'll thread through both ways. I'll just show you that tying it again, just so, because sometimes it's very easy to forget, it's very easy to make it into a clove hitch instead. So make your loop, act as if you're going to make a loop on the other side, and then clip those two together. Well, in fact, it doesn't have to be a clip, it could be a round pole or anything that you've made it on. Clip it like that, and then that will lock into your Italian hitch. And like I said, this is great for abseiling, lowering yourself safely, or lowering equipment that's really weighty that you need to lower down somewhere. Pull it, it's going to look weird until the weight goes on it, and then as soon as the weight drops on it, it'll slip down to its lower position. I could do it getting a bit higher up really, a little jump. And then from there, it's going to slip round. Now as soon as it slips round like that, it locks. If I drop my entire body weight on it, here I go swinging around again. And I've got that, you can see, I'm not holding it with a vast amount of force. The rope's jiggling about up there. But the moment, if I turn the right way, spinning away, if I start then releasing the pressure, it will lower me. And they're that simple. And like I said, they will run from one side to the other depending on which way you pull them. Nice and simple one. And the advantage there is that you can use it to lower heavy things, bags, kit, even a boat, whatever you want to do. I've used them before. They can be that good that I've literally used them before to like lower a car down a hill. It's got no brakes working on it, and we needed to get it basically down a hill on a farm, and I just got a big rope and fastened it to the bumper of a Land Rover and used the Italian hitch to lower it down in a controlled fashion. I'll show you that in just a moment. I just need to change the rig that I've got rolling here, and then I'll show you that lowering something else. So my apologies for the terrible prop here. I needed something to show you lowering a weight. All I could find was a mop bucket that I've filled with water, just to show you the controlled way that you could lower weight from a fixed point with the Italian hitch. So if you were at the top of a big hill, something like that, or up a tree, you need to lower something down safely and in control, the Italian hitch is a great way of doing it, and you don't have to be part of the system to do this, which is what makes it a safe way of doing it. If all else fails, I lose control, I can always just let go, step back, and it's not me that takes the fall. So the Italian hitch is waiting up there on the carabiner, and you can see, like I said, it will shift one way or the other. Sometimes panics people when they're lowering things because they'll feel it go quink quink. It's now facing this way because I've just pulled that up. I had to push it up to do so. You won't pull something up with an Italian hitch. That's never going to happen. And as soon you can see, no weight showing whatsoever. And as soon as I start letting the slack out, you can watch the knot roll over, and it will then lower itself. I can neaten that by putting that on that side, which is really where you want it. Depends what you're doing. If it was that side, you're going to get more friction, it's going to go slower. But then all I do, push that rope forward, and the weight of the old mop bucket pulls it through. As soon as I want it to stop, just a light tug. You know, it's not really much pressure whatsoever. That stops it dead. And then I can continue the lowering when I'm happy. So great for lowering things. You can even lower people on them, like I showed you a minute ago, using it for like the abseil. And yeah, granted, not the best prop in the world to be dangling a mop bucket full of water on it. Rather unsurprisingly, finding people who are going to let me strap them to a rope and dangle them off things for demonstration purposes is a rather hard thing to do. Don't really need the mop bucket full of water though. We can get rid of that dodgy prop now. The pile hitch, very, very useful for, again, temporarily anchoring something, particularly when you've got something that you can get to the end to, so a pole, not a bar that you can't get round. Make a loop, take the loop around, go under itself, and then just throw the loop onto the thing that you're anchoring, and then once you've pulled it, it's not going to move anywhere. And like I said, the best thing about, well, the thing that makes a good knot or hitch is it's easy to get undone after that. So in this case, you can feel it's got lots of grip there. Well, you can't feel, I can. Just pull on that loop, it'll pull slack, and you can take the whole thing off. If you're wondering why we've got a rather old tatty looking brush tail knocking about, it's because the pile hitch can do something else as well. Get your loop. This time we're going to do a double pile hitch, so instead of going under itself once, it's going to go twice, okay? So it's going to go once, twice, 3 times a pile hitch. No, I'm sorry. Sorry about that. Then it goes over itself. And what that'll do, once you pull it tight, that will then behave like a prusik. It will grip, even though that's a very slippery brush stale, it will not move no matter what you do. It's got it. So if you were hoisting something or moving something that hadn't got anything particularly grippy to tie to, your pile hitch, your double pile hitch would work. Particularly if you were dragging firewood or something like that, it would work great for that. It's not going to come off up until the point where you loosen the pull end and just whoop, slide off. Now, I used the skinny bit of paracord there because I suspected that the thicker cord, the thicker rope, probably wasn't going to grip as well being thicker. But why speculate? Let's give it a run. Again with the loop. Once, twice, 3 times a pile hitch. I'll stop that now. Pull it all tight. Let's see, I wouldn't expect this to be particularly grippy. Oh, nope, it's actually got it pretty well. I suspect if I put it, slide it back down again, and just work it a little bit, tighten it a little bit, it slips with the thicker rope, but it does take quite some going. Obviously the thicker rope for thicker things would work, so if you've got like a large log that you were moving for firewood, your thicker stuff would work just as well. It's just that this is obviously very skinny, very slippery, and it struggles to sort of tighten itself onto it. But that's good. I mean, if you were hoisting anything of a relative weight, that would work just fine. But as you saw with the skinny and stuff, the paracord, once, twice, tempting, I'm not going to do it. Pull it on, and it really does lock just like a prusik and it won't move. The pile hitch, very useful. So the mooring hitch, as its name suggests, very handy for tying boats on, something like that. It's very similar to the highwayman hitch, aside from when you pull to release, it is still wrapped onto something, as opposed to the highwayman hitch that just completely disappears. So to tie it, wrap the rope around something, make an underhand loop with the dead end. Now pull a loop through with the live end, take the remainder of the dead end and put a loop through that, pull it tight on the live end, and there you go, mooring hitch. It's a lot stronger than it looks as well. You put a lot of force on, it's not going to pull through, up until the point you pull the dead end, pull that loop through, it'll then let go of the dead end, out it comes, the mooring hitch. Couldn't get much more simple really. The clove hitch. Now you might have noticed a slight little bit of a location change going on here, but for whatever reason, when I did the clove hitch where I was before, it's not on the camera. Where it went, I have no idea, but it's not there. Now the clove hitch is a really good hitch for getting a solid anchor point that is removable, is adjustable. You could either tie it to an object like this, which is in fact the back of a caravan, for whatever reason you would want to, and it's quite a simple one to tie on like that. It goes around whatever you're tying it to, it goes over itself, back around what you're tying it to, and then the dead end goes back through so that there is opposing like that. So it's basically two opposing loops, and then once pulled tight, it will lock on and it will not move. No matter how much force really that you put on there, you will not make it move. Okay, and the only reason I'm not yanking at it mega hard is not because I believe it'll slip. I don't want to rip this handle off the back of the caravan, but it won't move. And I literally use these climbing anchors, points, whatever you want. When you want something to not move, the clove hitch will do it. Even if you're just fastening it onto another piece of rope, for whatever reason you might want to do that, dragging the rope up and down. When you pull down laterally like that, when you're like vertically pulling on it, would it grip to a rope? Yeah, it does. It does grip to a rope. I'm not saying you should do that and then hang your body off it if it's life and limb, just in case it did go. There are better ways to anchor yourself there. See the prusik. But for hauling rope and stuff, that would work just fine. Now that's the way that I've just tied it there, is threading it. There's an easier way to tie it depending on what you're tying it to. So tying it to there, obviously I have to thread it simply because there's no other way of getting around it. But if you're fastening it to, say, the top of a pole or something where you can get to the top of, there's a far easier way of tying it. Take your rope, turn the loop one way, and then what you're going to do is make another loop turned exactly the same way, and then put them together. That then, once you pull it onto something, is a clove hitch, and we'll do exactly the same thing. Pull it that way, it will lock. Pull it that way, it will lock. If you want it to undo, it just comes straight off. You can also make what they call a slippery clove hitch, which is a quick release clove hitch. Very similar to, you know, how the highwayman hitch comes undone, or any other quick release hitch. In fact, there's a lot of hitches and knots that you can do this with and turn them into a slippery knot, and it's really quite simple. So whether you've threaded it or not doesn't matter, whether you've done it with the twisty method and stuck it on there doesn't matter. The simple thing is before you tighten it up, take the dead end and put it back through like that, so that it creates a loop. Now pull on that loop and the live end, the end that goes to the weight, to set it. That is now a fully functioning clove hitch, but because of that loop there, when you want it to come off, all you need to do, pull that loop, it's loose and it disappears. And that's a clove hitch, the slippery version. Some interesting props coming out today. And that was 10 knots and hitches that I personally find useful for bushcraft or any sort of survival work. There's plenty more out there, get researching. And I did say at the start of this video that I was going to recommend a book that's full of them. Now this isn't a glowing recommendation or anything, it's not like I've done a massive amount of research and I think this is the best or anything. This is just a book that I bought a long time ago, and it's always had every knot that I have ever looked for. And it is the ultimate encyclopedia of knots and rope work by a guy called Jeffrey Budworth. There is all manner of knots and hitches. There's also rope work and things in here, tying your paracord bracelets and that sort of stuff. I found it all in that book from day one really. I've had this book an incredibly long time. I'm pretty sure you'll find it on eBay, places like that. You can find all of it on just Google, to be fair. It's just for me, I'm not one of the, I'm not really that tech minded. I don't really like tech around, and what bothers me intently, and I'm sure somebody's going to say you could change this in your settings, but what really bothers me is if I'm trying to learn something using my phone or using the laptop or something like that, you're halfway through it, your screen goes black, you have to then mess with it to get it to come back up. I prefer to just have it as paper copy, and then I can look at it and look at it as many times. Oh, it's the mooring hitch, we did that. Just look at it as many times as I want without it switching itself off or going to standby. Books don't go to standby. So that being said, thank you for watching. Like, share, subscribe and all of that, and get out there, enjoy yourselves, learn some knots and hitches, find out the most practical ways you can use them, and feel free to write in the comments exactly what you're using them for. If you've got any other suggestions that you think I might like, please feel free to comment.